Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. After I took a little bit of a break after the finish of Stage 4, now I'm finally back and we will take a look at the games from Stage 5 of this tournament. And in Stage 5, as you can see, there are only 112 players left out of originally more than 1000. So at this point, the players who made it that far definitely have shown their skill. And yeah, with that, the competition will get tougher and tougher. Those 112 players are divided in groups on 4 at this part of the tournament. There are actually only 4 upper bracket groups left. But as you can see, I am sadly not in one of them. If you remember Stage 4, sadly I didn't manage to win my group, and with that I'm already in the lower bracket, in lower bracket group 6. And that means if I don't manage to win my group, I'm out of the tournament. I have 3 opponents. There will be 2 4-player, 3 3-player, and 3 2-player games played. And if I at the end am not on the top of my group, I will be eliminated. Of course, I want to give my best to avoid that. And yeah, now before we take a look at the first game, we will take a quick look at the opponents of my group. And the 3 opponents in my group are moemoe, Eske, and ciufile. And yeah, let's introduce them very quickly. First, we have, as said, moemoe, a player which name was not familiar to myself before this tournament. So it could be that he is relatively new to the tournament scene. However, in this tournament, he has definitely shown that he has a high quality of play. He had to start in Stage 1, so was none of the seeded players. And in Stage 1, the tournament didn't start ideally for him because he only finished second, but with 26 points. And in Stage 1, also some of the best second placed players made it into the upper bracket of the next stage. So despite him finishing second, he remained in the upper bracket. And then in the stages after, his performance got better in Stage 2. One player timed out in some games, so only 5 games were played, but moemoe managed to win his group with 21 points. In Stage 3, it was very close, but moemoe again managed to win his group with 27 points, 1 point before Sylvan, also a strong player that was in that group. And then in Stage 4, there he finished third, and then, same as me, went down to the lower bracket for the current stage. But the group that he was in was definitely quite a tough group. The current world champion, Morta Pecheur, was part of that group, but he actually also didn't win this group at the end. Wolfgar, also a relatively new name, managed to win this group and remained in upper. So yeah, no shame in finishing third with at least 16 points. Definitely moemoe has shown that he can compete on a very high level, and so yeah, it will be interesting to see what we can see from him during this stage. In the Intermezzo Championship, he just managed to win his gold group, will play in platinum soon. In international, he is at the moment still playing in silver, but if he is indeed new to the tournament scene, then it could be that he's also just still on his way climbing up the divisions. Then the next player in my group is Eske, and Eske is maybe the most known name out of my opponents. He already played some seasons in the Grandmaster division of the Intermezzo Championship, so competed there on a very high level. Managed to stay in the division for several seasons, and I also played against him there already, so I have already a record against him. And yeah, in the current World Championship, he didn't have to play in the first 2 stages, was a seeded player because he made it into Stage 5 of the last year's World Championship, so he participated already there. When he then started playing in Stage 3, it didn't start ideally for him. He finished second with 26 points and immediately went down to the lower bracket. But there in the stage before, he managed with a whopping 36 points, so a very strong result. And he is probably the most known and maybe also the strongest opponent in this group. And then as last opponent, we have ciufile, also a name that is not really familiar to me. He also didn't play in, same as moemoe, didn't play in last year's World Championship. He, in the last Intermezzo Championship, played in the wood division, indicating that he just maybe started entering this tournament. And in this current World Championship, he in the first stage won his group with 30 points. Then in the second stage, he finished second with 23.5 points, meaning he went to the lower bracket in stage 3, but then he managed to win with 36 points, a very strong result. And in stage 4, he also managed to win with 30 points, so has definitely shown that he is capable of doing, getting some nice results in. Alright, and with those short introductions, we will now take a quick look at the clicker rating and then at the first game of the stage. And in the rating, we can see that I am at the moment at the 10th position in the rating. So with my not so great results in the recent months, my rating definitely has gone down quite a bit, which I'm of course not happy about. At least I'm still in the top 10, but ideally, of course, I want to start climbing again now a little bit. Then we have Eske, who is in the 35th position, so definitely very solid, very strong, and now with him playing in the Grandmaster Division also some season, that is of course a ranking that is maybe also expected, but now according to the clicker rating, he is probably the strongest opponent in this group. Then we have moemoe, who is at the moment the 117th position, also a very solid spot in the rating. And then ciufile is at the 176th spot, but we can see that his estimated rating is actually a little bit higher than moemoe's, so he maybe didn't play that many rated games yet, and if he continues playing in the fashion that he played so far, he also relatively soon might climb even more in the rating. So Eske probably the most known and maybe also the strongest opponent, and the other players probably two players who entered the tournament scene not that long ago, and who it's also a little bit of a wild card how strong they are really at the end. So that will be very interesting. We can maybe also take a very quick look at their ratings on the different player counts. At 2-player games, we can see that all of them are not are a little bit weaker maybe at that player counts. I'm actually still in first position in that one, so maybe that is the player count where I could maybe have the best chances, at least according to this rating system. In the 3-player ratings, we see that Eske has a really nice position, and that of course makes sense when he had his best performances in the Intermezzo Championship, which is a pure 3-player tournament, and moemoe and ciufile are both a little bit weaker compared to their rating in the overall rating. And then in 4-player games, Eske is a little bit weaker maybe, but moemoe is maybe the best in 4-player games, so that could maybe be the player count where he excels the most, while Eske is best in 3-player games. And so with having taken a look at the rating, we will now take a look at the first game, which is one of the 2 4-player games, so all of the opponents are involved. I hope you are excited. Now without further ado, we will take a look at the game. In this game, I am playing in the 2nd position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that there's definitely some theater synergy there. We have Marlene Dietrich, Chaplin, Anti-Hollywood in H3, there's also Bach in H2. We have some science synergy with Einstein, also Sid Meier, some lab synergy, there's Marie Curie, there is no spaceflight and also no Manhattan Project, however. There's the Red Cross in the game, Mahatma Gandhi and Churchill for the military. And then also fast food chains as just a very solid wonder, but no internet. In H2 we have some strong wonders. We have the Suez Canal and also James Cook, so colonization strategy could certainly work relatively nicely. We have the ocean liner service together with Maria Theresa. The Harvard College is there as a strong wonder. And then also the other 2 can definitely be very solid. Bach for some culture synergy also in H2. We have Nobel as a science leader, Darwin for either some culture production or to maybe pair him with some nice lab science production. Then we have 2 military action leaders with Robespierre and Napoleon. Also 2 military action leaders in H1 with Joan of Arc and Jan Žižka. There's Barbarossa to help with the strength or maybe with a colonization game. Isabella and Columbus could also maybe be nice to set up a colonization game and maybe get the Suez Canal as a nice payoff card. And then we have Michelangelo together with Machu Picchu and St. Peter's Basilica, so there could be some potential for him. And also Leonardo for some lab and printing press synergy. We have Silk Road, but no Universitas. We have the 2 strength wonders with the Meiji Castle and the Great Wall, and then as said, St. Peter's Basilica and Machu Picchu as the wonders from H1. Momo is in the first position and he doesn't want to commit to either Caesar or Ashoka and instead just takes the Ridgeland, maybe hoping that he can pick up a better leader. At the next turn, Ashoka in first position is definitely not great, and Caesar without knowing which wonder he will get, and if he has actually an advantage maybe in winning some strength events, also maybe not ideal. It could of course be that leaders like Hippocrates and Hammurabi will be taken away, then he might end up with one of those leaders anyway, but I think it's fine to maybe not commit to them yet. Maybe it could also be fine to just take either Ashoka or Caesar here. Then I'm in second position, and for me, there are definitely some options. I could first of all say, I have to ask myself the question, do I want to take just the Rome roads, get a wonder for myself, or do I rather want to grab one of those leaders? And now, with the Rome roads taken, I thought that it definitely could happen that both Hammurabi and also Hippocrates are taken away. I think it's even quite likely. And then there might still be some leaders left for me, but Ashoka with the Rome roads, which requires 4 civil actions, and Ashoka also as a leader that requires some civil actions, is not the ideal combination. Moses could maybe be fine, but wouldn't be that ideal. And then the leaders that could come out of the deck, Alex and Sansu, are also not that strong. So I felt like while I have maybe a very strong wonder available for myself with the Rome roads, and especially in 4-player games, I like that wonder actually quite a bit. The leaders that I could get with it maybe could be fine, but not really that amazing. And with that, I at the end made a decision that I rather want to commit to a leader here, because when we take a look at the wonders from H8 that I actually left in the deck, we have the Pyramids, Stonehenge, and the Library of Alexandria. So I think maybe I have a decent chance that those wonders will drop and that I then have the chance to take one of them. The question is, when I want to rather go for leader, which one do I actually go for? There's Hippocrates, who is just a very solid leader, but I also have Ashoka and the ability to take him immediately together with a yellow card, which I think makes him quite a bit stronger compared to just getting him. We also have Caesar, but without some clear synergy, I didn't want to go for Caesar, even though there could maybe be a bit of payoff with the Suez Canal and James Cook. And now, it was a close decision for me, but I do think if I actually get the additional yellow card, I think Ashoka is immediately. I think Ashoka is just a very solid leader, and there is no Saladin as a nice early replacement leader, no Nostradamus, so maybe the potentially best early replacement leaders for Hippocrates are not there. Isabella could be fine, Joan of Arc maybe also if you get Alchemy or Printing Press, Leonardo of course as well, but there is Columbus as a nice transitional leader, Barbarossa can work nicely as a transitional leader as well, and so at the end I thought I rather want to have Ashoka here and went for Ashoka and the cultural heritage. Eske then will just go for Hammurabi, which definitely is a strong leader. Could have also maybe taken Rome roads, but then he either takes Caesar or patriotism, so at the end maybe just going for Hammurabi is fine. That leaves ciufile with the option to go for the Rome roads and Hippocrates, which I think is a strong start for him. Now we are on H1, and the pyramids and the library are actually revealed, and Momo makes a very interesting decision. After building the mine, he will actually pay 3 civil actions to get the pyramids. And while I do like the pyramids quite a bit myself, I feel like maybe that is a bit too expensive at the end. On the other hand, maybe if he doesn't want to go for Caesar, then he can't spend his civil actions that effectively anyway, but even if he doesn't have the best synergy from the wonders, I think playing in Caesar in first position could still be fine, and if he then doesn't take any more cards from the row, both pyramids and library will stay on 3 civil actions for myself. And so I guess there's a reasonable hope that maybe he can get one of those 2 cheaper at the next turn. So I'm not sure if I would be willing to pay that much, but of course now he makes sure that he has the pyramids, can maybe still go for a leader the next turn in first position. It definitely can happen that at the third turn there's not that much to do anyway, so it can definitely turn out fine, but I think to me it feels a little bit too expensive at the end. That means for me, however, that there will be the library remaining on the card row, but on 3 civil actions, and I definitely don't want to spend 3 civil actions to take it, but if I don't take it, then Eske, especially with Hammurabi, I think there's a good chance that he will take it away, so I have to make a decision here. Do I want to go for the Hanging Gardens, or do I maybe want to leave myself open and go for an H1 government form directly? And the Hanging Gardens, maybe not being the ideal wonder, but I think especially with Ashoka it can be important to have something to invest into. Normally getting an early Silk Road could be something to hope towards, but with Ashoka a wonder that requires that many civil actions and doesn't give a nice opportunity to actually spend some rocks, and with that maybe help to get out of corruption, I felt like a Silk Road wouldn't be even that great, and I think it's just important to maybe have something to invest into with Ashoka, and instead of just taking an HA yellow card at the end, and thought that even though the Hanging Gardens not being an ideal wonder, it's still very fine. There's Barbarossa for some synergy, there's Michelangelo for some synergy, and so I was at the end just fine taking the Hanging Gardens here. And then it's Eske's turn. I will draw a Legion and an Aggression. Eske will go for Hammurabi, takes the library, which I expected, but then he also makes a bit of a surprising decision for me. Actually takes the Engineering Genius for 2 civil actions, but at the cost of delaying the mine. I feel like maybe I would have just gone for building a mine, increasing my population. With the Engineering Genius, of course, he can finish the library already the next turn, but it's still also only 1 science production. Basically the same, like if he now builds the mine and then the second lab, he also gets already up to 2 science production, and then he has the mine running already for 2 turns, which makes up for the Engineering Genius. So I'm not sure about this move. At least he makes sure that one of the others don't get Engineering Genius, and he can finish that wonder early. Maybe he's open to take an H1 government from H1 wonder relatively quickly, and maybe he can leave himself with a free population without going into consumption relatively easily. But I think I probably would have just preferred to just build a mine and increase population here. Now it's ciufile's turn. He will build a mine, increase his population. He also goes for an interesting decision. So at the second turn, all of my opponents went for something that I was a bit surprised to see. Ciufile maybe doesn't have the most exciting options. I think at his position, I would probably just either elect Hippocrates and then just take either Urban Growth or Frugality, or maybe go for a bit of a gamble, take Leonardo and hope that soon there will either be Printing Press or Alchemy available. He, however, actually takes the Drama in hand and is willing to actually delay Hippocrates, which is maybe not too bad, but if he has the chance to actually go into a leader relatively early, then it can be a bit annoying not having started to collect those tokens relatively early. And taking the Drama here for 2 I think is a bit expensive. There are 2 copies coming down the row. I think there's at least a reasonable chance that he can take one of those at the next turn. It's of course not guaranteed, and when we take a look at the Leaders and Wonders again, there's Bach, Marlene, Hollywood, Chaplin, so definitely some synergy, and maybe at the end he just wanted to make completely sure that he has this card available with the additional yellow tokens from Hippocrates. He has maybe more population, with that more has it a little bit easier to actually get into Drama. So I think there's definitely some understandable synergy in this game, but I probably still wouldn't have been willing to delay Hippocrates in order to take this Drama. Moemoe offers a very early open borders agreement to ciufile, which of course I was not too happy to see. He will then start building on the pyramids, and the next turn can finish it, will delay the second lab for now, and then will go for Alex. I think all of those 3 leaders could be considered. Alex, I think, especially with the pyramids, definitely a fine leader. Not the most exciting one, but definitely a fine one. At my turn, I think I have just the opportunity here to relatively quickly set up a strong economy, and that I can do with taking Leonardo and the Alchemy. That of course means that maybe I won't keep Ashoka for too long, which is then maybe not ideal, but I can take Leonardo and Alchemy this turn, with that activating the full Ashoka bonus, and then either the next turn or maybe in 2 turns I can start going for Alchemies, and then I have some really strong science production with Leonardo, get some additional resources, just have a strong economical start. And I do think in my position it's maybe even more important to go for something like this, because the Hanging Gardens, one of the reasons why it's maybe not that great of a wonder is that you don't really need the happy faces very early. But in order to avoid this issue, a nice workaround is of course to just finish it a little bit later. And now maybe I have a nice opportunity to do so. I can now take the Alchemy, just start investing into some nice economy upgrades, and then only later in H1 I can then start building or finish the Hanging Gardens, and then at a point where the happy faces will actually matter. So I think it's just very strong getting into Alchemy together with Leonardo here. So I will take both of those cards in hand. At the end I have 1 civil action left. I could say that I don't want to go in consumption. I could, for example, build a Step of the Hanging Gardens. That would only leave myself with 5 resources at the next turn, but if I elect Leonardo, I get the 6th resource that I need in order to build an Alchemy directly. I don't want to build a second lab now, because I think I have a very nice opportunity to save a civil action with just building the Alchemy directly instead of building an HA lab now and upgrading it later. The problem is, if there's no science event revealed, I need to play the Cultural Heritage the next turn, then elect Leonardo, develop the Alchemy, build one. I still have 1 civil action left then, but if I do now build a Step of the Hanging Gardens, I still have 5 food left. I can spend 2 with increasing my population, but if only 1 event is revealed, it gives 2 things like food, resources, or a combination of those, then I would have some trouble to get out of corruption. And with that, I thought that I maybe rather want to increase my population, maybe giving myself a little bit more freedom for the next turn. And yeah, so I thought it is better than building a step of the Hanging Gardens. I have a Shoka for a little bit of additional food until I go into Leonardo. I have the Hanging Gardens for some additional food and some happy faces, which means I can maybe put more population into non-happy face buildings. And with that, I think it's not too bad to go into consumption very early here. I draw some cards, the Uncertain Borders and the New Deposits. Eske Seeds, the first event, is revealed the development of civil life. He will use it to increase his population, will actually follow up with him having taken the Engineering Genius, will finish the library, could now go for an early Silk Road. I do think it could be an interesting decision, but he actually rather goes for Yanshishka, which is a bit tricky. He actually doesn't have any military card in hand now, so he doesn't know when he will get a tactic, but maybe at some point one of his opponents will reveal one, and Shishka, of course, is still a leader that has a lot of potential. And also maybe makes Eske a bit safer. He knows that both the players behind him have an HA leader that maybe wants to get replaced relatively quickly, so with taking Shishka he also denies them the option to maybe go for a quick replacement. Ciufile will build 2 stages of the Rome roads, increases his population, and elects Hippocrates. Actually, I think he didn't increase his population. He increased it with the civil life, but then took the reserves. Now can maybe finish the Rome roads at the next turn. With the reserves, maybe even also build a second lab in addition to that. Moemoe doesn't use Alex yet, instead Seeds. The development of religion is revealed. He will finish the pyramids, and he will now go for the Silk Road. I think it makes definitely some sense for him. He has 5 civil actions, is on bronze mines, and yeah, I think the Silk Road should be very strong here with his last civil action. He will then take the frugality. Could have maybe used Alex for an additional food production immediately, but makes the decision to keep him for now. Interestingly, doesn't take the swordsman, maybe has already a knight's tactic and is not willing to spend a civil action on the swordsman here. Now it is my turn, and it's a bit of an interesting decision here, because there is the development of civil life that is evaluated at the beginning of my turn, and I basically have 2 main options. Either I can, as I did now during this turn, develop the alchemy for 3 science, or I could use it to increase my population for 2 food. And it's interesting because with the variation that I go for now, I will actually keep Ashoka for another turn. I will now go for now that I already have developed the alchemy with the development of civil life, I don't score resource for it with Leonardo, so I can also just keep Ashoka for an additional food and resource instead of now electing Leonardo only for an additional science after I have already developed this alchemy. And now, so basically with this option, I save a science, but with the development of civil life, but I basically lose a science with not going for Leonardo. I gain a resource from Ashoka, but I would have also gained one from Leonardo if I increase population with development of civil life and then develop the alchemy with him. And with using the development of civil life, increasing my population, I save a food there, but I actually get the food now back with keeping Ashoka. So on what I actually gain for specific resources, the turns are basically almost completely the same. But at the end, I think it's better to go for the variation with developing the alchemy, because that means that I have a little bit more freedom, because now I won't spend my civil action on increasing my population, while if I use the development of civil life on that, I need an additional civil action, because then I still need to develop the alchemy. I need to play the cultural heritage in order to build it, and then at the end of my turn I would need to make a decision between taking swordsman or the breakthrough. I think with having the legion tactic, it's just very nice having the opportunity to get the swordsman for 1 civil action, but despite me already having got some good science production, I still think getting a breakthrough for 1 civil action is still a very nice deal. So with now going for this Ashoka variation, with not spending a civil action, also not the civil action of the civil life, on increasing my population, I can more easily just take swordsman and breakthrough, and then as my hand is full, I will just play the cultural heritage. And also, in case I don't develop a technology at the next turn, I have now also the option to just keep Ashoka for an additional turn after my next turn and getting an additional food and resource instead of just a science from Leonardo. So I at the end felt like this should be the better option, but it was a bit funny because it basically cancelled itself completely out on the amount of resources that I get from the one or the other option. I could also think about cards like Drama, potentially Warfare. Those definitely could be considered, but I think with having the Legion tactic, the Swordsman is just more important, and I also at the end rather wanted to have the breakthrough than the Drama, but with those synergy in the game, definitely could be an idea to go for the Drama here. I keep the Legion tactic and the new deposits. I draw a colonization card in the strategic territory. Now it's Eske's turn. He will take the free religion, builds a mine, increases his population, and takes the irrigation for 2 civil actions. Now it's Ciufile's turn. He will seed, and the development of trade routes are revealed. He will now finish the Roman roads, place the reserves for resources, builds the second lab, and just get some production going this turn. moemoe still won't use Alex, but I think he will increase his population this turn, meaning that this turn the yellow token doesn't really make a difference on how much food he produces, and then of course he can also just keep Alex around if he has a nice event to push. The development of planning is revealed, and the options are development of warfare, agriculture, or markets. moemoe makes the decision to go for markets and take some additional resources. He will use those additional resources to actually just use all of his 5 civil actions to finish the Silk Road. Has finished the Silk Road very quickly, can now start getting some additional value out of some yellow cards, has additional science production, and also has some respectable culture production relatively early, so definitely not bad that he finished those wonders very early. Now it is my turn, and I won't see it. Both of those events, it's not clear how nice they will really be, and I wanted to have a bit more time until I will need to actually build up some military. And then this turn I will just, first of all, I have to make a decision on what I take from the development of planning. And as you can see, I actually take the food from the development of markets, meaning I have a lot of food saved up now. I will have 9 food at my next turn, and I will gain even more food from the Hanging Gardens. And the question is the food really the most important thing to take here? But I thought that it of course depends on the developments that are coming, but when we take a look at those, there is no development left that gives additional food. Only the development of settlement gives a whole population, but not really a food. And I did some calculations and thought that the 2 food actually will likely make a difference on getting an additional population out compared to not taking the food. And I thought that I hopefully will have enough resources to do everything that I need during the following turns. And so at the end I made the decision to take the food. Also because I think it allowed me to use my actions a bit more nicely, because it allows me to increase my population 2 times. If I wouldn't have gone for that, I would have built 2 steps of the Hanging Gardens instead of the 2 population increases, but that maybe leaves myself a little bit inflexible because if I don't finish that, then it's maybe a bit tricky to get out of corruption, and if there is a nice opportunity to do something like going to iron instead of finishing that, maybe that could be a bit bad. So at the end I took actually the additional food, went for another upgrade, going up to 4 science production. I will increase my population 2 times, and I will just build a step of the Hanging Gardens, just being very civil action efficient, and I don't think neither of those cards is really worth taking here. Then I keep Ashoka for 1 more turn with planning to then maybe go for Leonardo the next turn, because the next turn the event deck likely will be flipped, meaning then I probably want to go into Swordsman, and then I can start going for Leonardo and get some science and resources out of him at the next turn. But as I don't develop a technology this turn, I just kept Ashoka for another turn. Then at the end of my turn I still have to do 1 interesting decision, and that is whether I want to reveal the Legion tactic or not. Just looking at myself, I do think I kind of want to reveal the Legion tactic, because that would mean that I have the option to just build 2 infantry units at the next turn and fulfill the tactic. If I don't reveal it now, I don't have enough military actions to do that, and especially with the event deck potentially flipped, it could just allow myself to be stronger and be better prepared for strength events. And I think I probably should have just revealed it. The reason why I didn't do it at the end is that Eske here, Hessian Shishka, didn't draw a lot of cards. It's definitely likely that he doesn't have a tactic yet. None of the other players have revealed one yet, so I just thought maybe it could be nice to keep it in hand for a little bit longer. But Eske maybe wants to keep Hammurabi for a bit longer anyway. It's likely that either one of the opponents will reveal one, or that Eske at some point will draw one anyway. And the Legion tactic, while it works with Jan Shishka, I also think it's not the strongest tactic that he could have. So at the end I think I should have probably just revealed it, but because I thought maybe it could be annoying for Eske not knowing what tactic he will go towards, but there is no military tech in the row, so it's not that he has to make a decision at his next turn, and relatively soon I maybe need to reveal it anyway. I mean, maybe at the next turn I can just build 2 swordsmen and then reveal it in 2 turns, maybe causing some issues for Eske, but at the end I think maybe I should have just revealed it here, giving myself the option to then build 2 infantry units at the next turn and get a very respectable amount of strength. I will draw 2 cards. Actually, will draw 2 colonization cards, so I am now relatively nicely prepared to potentially bid for a colony. Eske will take the monarchy in hand, maybe can still do a revolution with Hammurabi. Once he goes into Yanshushka, he has already the 3rd military action, so maybe not the ideal situation for monarchy, but it can still give him a nice boost for his economy, and being on 4 military actions is of course also not bad to even draw even more cards maybe in H2. Ciufile will go for Michelangelo, finds replacement for his Hippocrates, and will also go for a new wonder immediately. Takes the Medici Castle, has at the moment quite a bunch of resources saved up, so that he can finish the Medici Castle at the next turn, and after taking it he also finds a way to get out of corruption with building the first step, increasing his population and building a warrior. Maybe a little bit clunky, but he can finish the castle at the next turn, and maybe can even go for the next wonder immediately, potentially with Michelangelo. Moemoe Seeds also waits again with using Alex, but actually, maybe I said something wrong at the turn before when we take a look at this yellow bank. Maybe he could have again saved an additional food, but I think this turn he will increase his population anyway, so he rather wants to get an additional event in. The development of politics is revealed, so 3 cards are drawn for everyone, and I have now some events that I can potentially push. Moemoe will now finally build a 2nd lab, has now 3 science production, will increase his population once normally. It takes the cultural heritage, the irrigation and the monarchy, so it just takes a bunch of cards in hand, and then has some yellow cards that he can use with the Silk Road bonus. He then reveals the fighting band tactic, meaning that now sadly Eske has a tactic that he knows that he can work with, so I was hoping that maybe the others wouldn't reveal a tactic yet, but now I can maybe reveal my Legion tactic anyway. And as you can see, I will actually push the Reign of Terror. I will make sure to go up to 3 strength this turn, making it that I'm not in danger of getting hit by that during the next turn cycle. And then after that I can go for a whole Legion tactic. So I was hoping that I will be able to avoid being the weakest thanks to the Hanging Gardens and the amount of population that I have already. I have a bunch of population for the military available. I at least can go for 4 swordsmen at some point, which puts me at 10 strength, maybe even more. Maybe I can go for something like warfare strategy with the amount of science that I'm having. So I just thought there's a good chance that I won't be the weakest, and with that I just wanted to put that event into the deck, as it will cause some damage to at least one of my opponents, hopefully. The event revealed is the development of science. Now I will increase my population. I will elect Leonardo, as I will start building swordsmen this turn. I will build 1, and then I actually will reveal the Legion tactic. I could have potentially built a 2nd swordsman, but I was a bit worried, because the next turn could potentially be my last turn to finish the Hanging Gardens, and as you can see, if I build another swordsman, I have not enough resource left to finish the Hanging Gardens. Of course, I could maybe just take and develop a technology, but if there is no fitting technology available in the 1 civil action area, then if I don't get help from the event deck, I might just not be able to finish the Hanging Gardens in time, so I was not willing to commit to the 2nd swordsman. Instead, I revealed the Legion tactic so that I can keep more of my other cards in hand. Now that Moemoe revealed the fighting band tactic, Eske has something to copy for Yanshushka anyway if he wants to, and so that was the reason for that. I then have 2 civil actions left, and my first instinct was to just build a step of the Hanging Gardens and then take the urban growth. I don't really need those technologies with having the Hanging Gardens. Maybe I could still take them in hand, but there's no Pierre, so and with the Hanging Gardens I maybe don't necessarily need one of those H1 Happy Face solutions, really. So I thought maybe just building a step and taking the urban growth could be interesting. The problem is, there's definitely a chance that I just don't need the urban growth for a very long time. I have upgraded my labs with the Hanging Gardens. I have more than enough happy faces, so I also don't really need a happy face solution. So it could definitely happen that I just don't need the urban growth at all during whole of H2. And also, while I don't build a swordsman, so that I don't need to develop a technology in order to be able to finish the Hanging Gardens, I might still, if I have the chance, maybe go for tech and develop it, so that I can then finish the Hanging Gardens and build a swordsman at the next turn. And one technology that could potentially be available for me is the masonry. And if I build one more step of the Hanging Gardens, then I have to develop the masonry in order to get the 1 resource, but without any benefit. While now, when I actually spend 2 civil actions in the rich land, I have a chance to maybe get the masonry. The Code of Laws might be taken, but maybe the masonry will make it to me for my next turn, and then if I want to develop a tech anyway, I can maybe still use it, and then it's actually not that bad to maybe pay an additional civil action now. And I just think the Ridgeland is the way better card for me, because I definitely will go for farm and mine upgrades, and getting them done quicker could be very strong. At the end of my turn, I could just keep 2 colonizations cards, especially with the Suez Canal and Cook being the game, but now that I've put a strength event into the deck, I thought it could just be nice to be able to push and maybe get some potentially bad events out for the others at my turn, and so I kept a Good Harvest at the end, even though I have already a lot of population, so it's maybe not the greatest event for me to see it. Maybe I should have just kept the 2 cards, but I just thought it could be nice to at some point have the opportunity to see it and know that I have actually a card to see it in my hand. Eske will do the revolution this turn, increases his population to get out of corruption. Ciufile will seed, the first event will be revealed, it's the rebellion, but no one gets hit by that with the development of religion being revealed earlier. Ciufile will finish the Meiji Castle, takes the Code of Laws, he has a bunch of signs saved up, so wants to invest that signs, and then will go for the St. Peter's Basilica, uses Michelangelo again. And with that, he definitely has an interesting wonder setup, because once he enters age 3, he actually will have 6 culture production just from his wonders. So if he manages to maybe build up a stable position now during age 2, I think his position definitely has some potential. But he didn't upgrade a lot of economy yet, so maybe there could be the risk that he falls a bit behind. But if he just stays stable, he has the Michikazu to defend himself, he definitely could have just some very strong amount of passive production with all of those wonders, which could be a strong setup potentially. Then it's Momo's turn, and finally now he will use Alex, and as a new leader will go for Columbus immediately, indicating that he maybe has a strong colony. There is a Suez Canal that he activates for himself just with getting 1 colony with Columbus. If he then draws in a strong H2-1, he definitely can go for a very solid Suez Canal, and then with his last 2 civil actions he will take the Alchemy and increases his population with the Frugality, builds a warrior to get a bit stronger, uses the Frugality with the Silk Road bonus. Now it is my turn. And during my turn, I am not the weakest, I'm actually one of the 2 strongest, and with that I was willing to seed now, maybe getting the Reign of Terror out, maybe having a shot at something like Raiders, Call to Arms, Foray, where it's nice to be one of the 2 strongest or not one of the 2 weakest, so I pushed a Good Harvest here. There's no strength event revealed, instead a Cultural Influence, which is not that great for me, but it also doesn't make the biggest difference. And then as you can see, the masonry is actually still available, and with that it was relatively clear for me that I want to go for that. I can use it in my HA wonder. There are some interesting H2 wonders that I maybe can go for, and developing it just gives me an additional resource which allows me to finish the Hanging Gardens and just build a swordsman directly, making myself the strongest. And then I have 1 civil action left. I could just increase my population, spending all of my food, and making sure that I have another population out, as there could potentially be something like rats coming, but I felt like having another rich land could just really accelerate the speed on which I can get some maybe resource upgrades going, that with me being now relatively low on resource production, I was just willing to take that card, hoping that there won't be rats revealed, but even if there are rats revealed, I still have a very decent amount of population available. Eske went into food production, Ciufile has a lot of food saved up, moemoe has a lot of food saved up, so it also doesn't really look like there might be rats coming. With that I gave myself the freedom to invest a civil action here into another rich land. I draw 1 card, another colonization card. I've actually drawn quite a bunch of them now. Eske is the weakest, will take the iron for 2 civil actions, goes into Jan Žižka, has the phalanx tactic drawn. There was the development of politics, so at this point he definitely had a fair amount of draws, and then he will build a knight. Another one is now at 8 strength, the strongest, and takes the engineering genius for 2 civil actions. There are a lot of potentially strong wonders in H2, so there's maybe a good chance that he will find a nice use case for that yellow card at some point. Ciufile seeds, the Reign of Terror hits, so it worked out nicely to seed that. Momo will now lose a free population, maybe doesn't hurt him very badly immediately, but it's still a loss for him. Ciufile starts building on the St. Peter's Basilica, but can't build more than 1 step, will increase his population, builds another warrior, has the 2nd copy of Legion tactic, putting himself at 7 strength, takes the breakthrough and also the swordsman to maybe get some more strength going soon if he needs to. Now it's Momo's turn. First of all, H2 will start. Momo has a colony, the inhabited territory, could have also maybe waited with using Columbus, giving himself some H2 draws, but the additional population is maybe immediately useful for him. So we can see he will now increase his population, builds the knights, and takes the iron and the rich land. and he reveals the medieval army tactic, so he also would have only drawn 2 cards. Remains the weakest for now. Doesn't have enough resources to build a second knight. Now it's my turn, and I think the turn was relatively clear for me. Not completely, because there's definitely the option of just going into 2 iron upgrades, but I have such a big amount of science that I can easily go into Code of Laws while still staying prepared to get into an H2 government form, and with that I just felt it is too important to not stay on 4 civil actions, instead go up to 5. Being stuck on 4 civil action can be very limiting, and with going into Code of Laws instead of already committing to iron this turn, I also leave myself open to potentially get into an early coal, which could be a potential upgrade compared to going into a late iron. So I go into Code of Laws. I will increase my population to get out of corruption. There were no reds revealed. I have now nicely spent all of my food, so my decision maybe on earlier taking the food from the development of markets paid off quite nicely. And then, even though there is actually at some point a good harvest coming, then maybe again it won't, unless I have gone for selective breeding it already, but for now I'm very nicely down to 0 food. And then with my last civil action, I think it's still nice to take the iron in hand. If there's coal available the next turn, I might just go into coal, but if not, then I still, thanks to the 2 rich lands and the 1 resource that I get for developing the iron with the Leonardo, I have exactly enough resource to actually go into 3 iron upgrades, getting them done very quickly. And while it's late, I think with getting them done very quickly, it could still be very nice. I have done some production going, can maybe hope to get some H2 wonders and a government form, so I was mainly happy about my position. I think I have the potential to build up a strong economy, but the others also don't have bad positions, and especially ciufile, but also maybe moemoe. I have maybe will get a little bit of a culture lead, so I have to see how I will be able to deal with that. I draw my first H2 cards. It's the Infiltrate. Also, I build an additional swordsman to be the strongest again. Eske seeds, and a historic territory is revealed, and surprisingly I actually managed to win it. I think I was only willing to bid the warrior into 2 cards, and I also only was even willing to bid for this because there's a Suez Canal in the game, which can just be a very strong wonder potentially. Without a Suez Canal, maybe I would have even just passed, because I just don't need a happy face at the moment. Maybe it's better to keep the military unit. But if I send a warrior, I am still one of the 2 strongest at ciufile's turn, so hopefully I won't miss out on something bad, and at the next turn I can then decide if I just want to stay at a bit of a weaker amount of strength, or if I maybe miss out on an iron upgrade or something in order to rebuild a swordsman to get a bit stronger again. So with the Suez Canal I was willing to bid a warrior at least, and at the 2 cards I think I wasn't willing to bid a swordsman, just because I don't need a colony as much, but at the end I'm actually able to win it, and at least I get the 6 culture, closing the culture gap again a little bit, and the happy face might be useful at some point. Eske goes into 1 iron upgrade, increases his population, takes the efficient upgrade, so he can potentially go for 2 more upgrades at his next turn. ciufile seeds, and we can see that it was actually important that I didn't send a swordsman away, maybe also in order to keep a card, because now there's the foray revealed and I get rewarded for still being one of the 2 strongest. I definitely was happy to see that, getting maybe either 3 additional resources or maybe setting myself up to get an additional population with the good harvest could definitely be quite strong for me. ciufile takes the engineering genius, maybe allowing him to finish the St. Peter's Basilica, but still take and finish another wonder with Michelangelo, and then he will just increase his population with his last civil action. Is now at 8 culture production. Now it's Momo's turn. He will seed. The event deck flips now. The Pestilence is revealed. That actually limits my options a little bit, in the sense that I can't rebuild the unit that I have sent away now. Being on 8 strength hopefully will be somewhat fine for now, but at least takes an option away from me. Momo will increase his population, builds the second knight, making him the strongest now, plays the cultural heritage with the Silk Road bonus, gets into the iron, uses the rich land to get production going immediately, and takes the scientific method, but he is missing a resource for now in order to go for it immediately at the next turn. Now it is my turn. I can't reuse my politics phase, and during my turn I have to make a decision, because there's a coal available for 3 civil actions. But I also already have an iron in hand, which takes less science to develop. I could actually go for 3 upgrades immediately if I want to, instead of only going for 1 upgrade into coal that I do now. But the coal is just available very early, and I think at the long run it's just better, even if I have to pay a bigger price now. So I take it. It also means that ciufile, the other player who's still in bronze mines, maybe has to wait a little bit longer until he can get some additional production going. and so at the end I was willing to take the coal, develop it, and just go for an upgrade. If I would have gone for 3 iron upgrade, it's also a little bit a question what to do with my last civil action. Probably best could maybe be to take the warfare in order to be better prepared for Republic, in case that should be available at my next turn. So I guess that would be a fair pick, and I do think it maybe could be fine to just get into iron, but that early and being able to go for 1 upgrade now, potentially even 2 upgrades at the next turn if I develop something with Leonardo, is just extremely strong, and I think will be beneficial for me even with the bigger price now. I draw 2 cards, the Iconoclasm, interesting card to have in hand, and also the Plunder. Eske Seeds and the Crusades are revealed. I'm not part of that, so that's fine. Eske takes, interestingly, the Eiffel Tower. Is actually willing to miss out on an iron upgrade and blocks himself from some other strong wonders, but the Eiffel Tower, the happy face will be relevant for him, and also knowing Eske a little bit in his plays in general, I think he has a bit of a play style where he does try to build up some economy, but he always, at least I'm not sure if that is really his playstyle, but I think I noticed it a little bit that he tries to set up some culture production already, so that he is not in a position where he's behind in culture. I think I a lot more often experienced Eske just rather being in front in culture a little bit, not that he goes for some greedy play, but just implements a bit of cultural production here and there, values that I think. If I'm actually wrong with that, maybe Eske can correct me in the comments, but that's something that I noticed a little bit. And then of course the Eiffel Tower, just make sure to maybe have the option to go for a bit more cultural production. I do think if the happy face is relevant, which it is in this situation, the Eiffel Tower is a very decent wonder, and I also think I would definitely take it over statue with having only monarchy. In this position, of course, it blocks him from some wonders, but those could also be highly contested. He has the engineering genius where he maybe wants to make sure to be able to use it. So I do think it makes sense here to go for the Eiffel Tower, even though I'm not 100% certain if I would do it, but I do think it is a very, very solid line here. Even though it requires him to maybe slow down his production a little bit, which he otherwise could have maybe done with going for an additional upgrade. He now copies the medieval army tactic, going up to 9 strength. Remaining one of the 2 strongest, there's an international trade agreement between ciufile and Eske. Ciufile will get some additional resource, which might help him to go for potentially even more wonders, and Eske will get an additional food production. Ciufile doesn't want to be the weakest, goes for some upgrades to Swordsman, is now at 10 strength, one of the 2 strongest, takes the selective breeding to have the option to upgrade his food production at some point, and then will also go for the urban growth, and actually takes the Statue of Liberty. He doesn't have a government form yet, but at some point he definitely, or very likely, will get some one, and then the additional yellow tokens might just be nice to have. He can take it now very cheaply and can maybe just finish it later. He has the engineering genius, so he just makes sure to use Michelangelo again here. Now it's moemoe's turn. He will seed, opens the immigration, which was a pleasant surprise for me. I actually have the most happy faces. I thought that maybe it was seeded by ciufile, who has the St. Peter's Basilica, but after I managed to win the historic territory, I actually am the only player with 4 happy faces, and of course I very happily took that additional population from the event. So I was the weakest, so I was fearing something bad, but I actually got something nice. I was very happy about that. Moemoe will go for Bach. Doesn't have a copy of Opera yet. Is not willing to take that one for 3, which I think would also be quite expensive, but is hoping that maybe one of those 2 copies will find a way to him, and even if not, at least he had no leader, so he just is getting some culture production, and instead of maybe waiting a lot more turns until one of those other leaders will be available, the ones in a row are maybe all not that ideal for him. I think it makes sense to go for Bach, just getting a bit of culture production just for having him available, and he has a chance to get the opera at some point and then accelerate the culture production. Also, he takes breakthrough in architecture, and with the breakthrough he actually has enough science to go into scientific method with the architecture and has just enough resource to go for 2 upgrades, so there's the potential that he will go for quite a big science boost at his next turn. Now it is my turn, and I was very happy to see that there is a constitutional monarchy available. That is a card that that will really give me a nice boost, and also I think I didn't have knowledge about Dark Ages, so now being able to spend a lot of science also made me quite a bit less nervous about that potential event. There was, however, one question that I had to ask myself, and that is if I maybe want to use the opportunity to make it a switch to Darwin, who then could let me take the conman for 1 civil action cheaper, so I could just implement him into my turn here without any civil action cost, because I will get the civil action back immediately, and maybe even another one if I then consider taking maybe the selective breeding. I have a religion, but at the moment more than enough happy faces anyway, and it could be a solid leader to have. But I think Leonardo is also still giving me some nice benefits, and the additional resource that I get for actually developing the Conmon with him instead of with having Darwin allows myself to actually go for a second coal upgrade, which I think is quite nice. And with the religion, with not knowing whether I get team spots, I think Darwin could potentially be problematic, and at the end I rather kept myself open for one of the other leaders, but those are maybe also not that ideal. Napoleon maybe could be interesting, especially if I draw the right military cards. Nobel, of course, always fine, but especially if we get him late, also not the greatest. And Cook with one colony, also not really that great unless there are some more in the deck. So because of that, I really considered Darwin here, but at the end made a decision to stay with Leonardo and use the additional resource that I get from developing the Conmon in order to go for actually 2 coal upgrades. Now it's still early in age 2, but I have already all of my 3 mines upgraded to coal, which I think is quite strong. If I have the opportunity to take a wonder, then I would just have, I think, a very strong position. And with my last civil action, I could still take Darwin at least in hand, but I think having the cavalryman and now that I have the chance to get them for 1 civil action is just too important. There's a bit of a risk that I take here, and that is that I do not take a copy of selective breeding here. Eske has already irrigation, but ciufile has already a copy. But I think it's unlikely that Eske will do a hate draft for 2 civil actions, and also there are that many leaders in the front of those copies that he can't really make it, that one of those cards is in the discard spot in moemoe's turn, at least I think so. Maybe it is potentially possible, but I do think that's not that likely, so I was hoping that I have a chance to get one of those selective breeding at the next turn, because ciufile can't deny one. Eske, it would definitely be expensive for him, and moemoe can take one, but then there's still one other one left for me. I draw some cards now, a colonization card, of war, and also the politics of strength. Eske seeds, the event revealed is the good harvest. It was seeded by me, it's maybe not too great at the end. Now I'm just stuck at 2 food at the moment. I was hoping that maybe it won't be revealed before my next turn. I can get into selective breeding, but now already half of this deck is revealed, so it had to be expected that a good harvest is revealed now before my next turn. Eske will actually go for Darwin, which is interesting because he has a religion which he will lose the happy face. He will then get the happy face back from the Eiffel Tower, but if the organized religion is taken, then if he doesn't get the team spots, he could be at a bit of a risky position in regards to his happy faces, especially because he also doesn't take the opera, so I think it's a bit risky. Maybe he could also just go for Maria or leave himself open for another leader, but makes the decision to go for Darwin here. ciufile gets the second copy of Conmon, is just enough science, can develop it, is now relatively low in science, which could mean that he delays his economy upgrades by quite a bit, but at least he has now 7 civil actions, has, thanks to the pact, at least 4 resource production, can finish the statue, then has a very strong yellow bank, and then maybe soon can start going into either selective breeding coal or maybe also still the second copy of scientific method. Now it's moemoe's turn. He seeds and opens the uncertain border. So now sadly I do get punished for being the weakest, but I was now weakest for a bit of time, so that's what you have to expect. But losing the yellow token definitely hurts, of course. moemoe will then go for the scientific method, goes for the architecture, goes for 2 upgrades, takes the opera and takes the selective breeding. And then at my next turn I can do a very clean turn, but first of all I make an interesting and potentially relevant decision here. Because I push, and the event I push is the iconoclasm, which I think is an event that could potentially work very nicely for me, because I don't have a leader available at the moment. It could be that Nobel and Napoleon are very late, so that I maybe go into H3 without a leader anyway, so and then maybe the leaders of my opponents will be removed, or maybe I don't even have to bother taking one of those leaders with knowing that the iconoclasm is coming. Especially removing Bach from moemoe, of course, could potentially be very strong. The problem is, at the next deck, there are only H2 cards, so with seeding it now, there's definitely a reasonable chance that it will be revealed relatively quickly. But I just felt if I don't seed it now, then the event deck could definitely flip before my next turn, and if I seed it then it could just take quite a while, and then it could maybe be a bit late if it is revealed at the middle of H3. It could still be fine, I have knowledge about it, I can prepare for it, so maybe I could just keep it in hand, but I think I don't have the hope then that it can just be revealed at a perfect time, while now, especially if maybe there is not too much pushing going on, there is a chance that maybe it is just revealed after H3 starts, which could have a very big impact. especially if maybe I haven't committed to a leader yet and can still take one from H2 after this reveal. That of course would be the perfect scenario. So maybe the iconoclasm is a bit more reliable if I keep it in hand, but I don't have a hope to maybe get a perfect iconoclasm. And if it is revealed before H3 starts, maybe I will lose Leonardo, but if it isn't revealed before my next turn, I might lose him anyway, and then at least there won't be any bad thing happening. I just maybe miss out on a potentially nice event. But at the end, I was actually willing to put it already in the next deck, hoping that maybe there is not too much seeding going on the next turns. The wealthy territory is revealed, which I was willing to bid 1 unit in my card, but it is not enough. Eske wins it for a warrior and 2 colonization cards. And I do think this turn is just extremely clean. I can go for selective breeding, I can go for 2 upgrades, scoring another resource with Leonardo, and then I have 3 civil actions left, which I will use to first of all take the cannons, getting another military tech for only 1 civil action, and then the Harvard College. And thanks to the 1 resource from Leonardo, I have just enough resources to finish it in the next turn. I have the masonry, it only takes me 2 civil actions to finish it, and then I just have a very strong economy, and I have also just some very strong science production during H3, so I felt like this turn is extremely clean. I don't take the organized religion, but with the hanging gardens, hopefully I will be somewhat fine in regards of my happy face solution, or in regards of my happy faces. There's of course always the danger of ravages of time, but if that is revealed, at least there's a chance that I will get the team sports. So I think at the turn was just too clean, and I didn't want to do anything else in order to take this organized religion. Eske seeds, so sadly the opponent starts seeding immediately, but of course with me being the weakest, it also is not unlikely that it will happen. Eske seeds, the freedom of movement is revealed, which he will use to put a religion into an iron mine. He doesn't need a religion if he goes for Darwin soon. Will then finish the Eiffel Tower, builds a warrior to not be the weakest after his turn, takes the justice system to not be stuck on 5 civil actions during H3, goes for another upgrade, is out of the sudden now at 8 resource production with having used the freedom of movement to get another mine, and then takes the urban growth. Maybe has a shot at getting a scientific method at the next turn for cheaper with Darwin, which he then can upgrade 2 times to get some very decent science production. Now it's Ciufile's turn, he seeds, the Ravages of Time are revealed, so Iconoclasm is not yet revealed, but sadly the Ravages of Time, meaning that now of course we have a scenario where we can see why the Hanging Gardens is a bit problematic. It's now revealed relatively early, and now I have not taken the organized religion, meaning I'm a bit dependent on whether I get the team sports. At least I still have the additional happy face from the historic territory, but having the Hanging Gardens had only for a few turns, definitely not ideal of course. Ciufile will then play the Engineering Genius, finishes the Statue of Liberty, takes Nobel, and the reserves will allow him to actually start maybe going into coal at the next turn, and then he also takes the rich land to maybe get into coal even quicker. Now it's Momo's turn, he also seeds. The Iconoclasm is not yet revealed, but all of my 3 opponents have pushed, so I was definitely worried that maybe the chances are now a bit worse, that the Iconoclasm will be revealed just at a perfect timing. Prosperity is revealed instead, which is a fine event for me, I get the most food out of it. Momo will take the strategy, use the freedom of movement to put a bronze to iron. What did Ciufile do with the freedom of movement? He used it to do nothing. Maybe didn't find a nice use for it. Momo will make himself the strongest with going for the strategy, increases his population 2 times and ends his turn. And now it is my turn. I definitely don't want to push. The weakest, and I ideally I was of course still hoping for the Iconoclasm maybe being a bit more behind in the deck. There are some events to be evaluated. First of all, I will lose the Hanging Gardens, and then I also have to think about the freedom of movement. As you can see, I didn't really find anything to do with it, because I can't really send a swordsman easily away. I can maybe put it into the alchemy, but then I can't really finish the Harvard College this turn. I just didn't find anything very nice to do. If I use it to, maybe I could have used it to put a religion into swordsman or something like this. I guessed it could be an idea, but at the end I just decided against it, and as you can see I take the team sports for 3 here, and I do think that is completely necessary in this position. Because now that I lost the Hanging Gardens, I sadly will lose the Happy Face solution relatively soon. When we take a look at Eske, he has Darwin, he also really needs the Happy Face solution. Now maybe he will be stuck in a position where he could get some happy face problems during H3 with all of the happy face solutions being gone from H2. Truthfully, it doesn't have any happy face issues, but moemoe also, maybe it's not really an urgent or an very critical situation, but he doesn't have any organized religions or arenas available, so he can maybe go for some operas, but also it could still be nice for him to maybe have a happy face solution in hand. So I think first of all I need it for myself, and also some other players need it, so it's expensive, but I think it's what I have to do here. Then I will still finish the Harvard College. Of course, I could build one. I don't have knowledge about all happy face related events, so I could get punished for not fixing my happy faces now, but I do think the 3 additional science and the 1 culture reduction is just too big of a boost that I don't want to miss out. I then have 2 civil actions left. Potentially I could just take one of those yellow cards, maybe the breakthrough or the wave, but taking them for 2 is a little bit expensive, and instead I made the decision to develop the team sports, a civil action that I very likely have to do at the next turn anyway, and doing it now makes it that I can still get 1 resource out of Leonardo, and then I will just increase my population 1 time to also just have more civil actions available at the next turn, maybe be more flexible when going into H3. And no, so I think that was a very solid turn, a relatively clear turn, but of course not ideal that the Hanging Gardens were destroyed and that I have to go for the team sports, but at least I knew it now, because of the Ravages of Time were now revealed after my turn. Maybe I wouldn't have taken the team sports for 3, and then maybe I could have had some issues going into H3. So maybe it was actually positive for me that it was revealed early, so that I actually could play around it. I keep the Politics of Strength, the 2 colonization cards, and the Tactic. I draw another war. I discarded another one at the end of my turn, the Popularizations of Science and the Historic Territory. Eske seeds, and sadly all of my opponents have seeded at every moment after I seeded the Iconoclasm into the deck, so the event deck moved a bit more quickly than I was hoping for, meaning that the Iconoclasm was not revealed at the perfect time. It was a risk that I took. At least when we take a look now at the turn of Eske, we can see that it still did some damage at least to one of my opponents. I would have lost Leonardo before my next turn anyway, but for Eske, he could have now saved the civil action with electing Darwin, and we can see that at the end of his turn that he definitely could have done some reasonable things with having that additional civil action available. He will now go for the ocean liner service. I actually expected that maybe he will go for Darwin and into scientific methods with already having irrigation. But the ocean line, of course, is still potentially strong, and one of the reasons to go for it might actually also be him missing out on a happy face solution, because one way, of course, to still be somewhat in a position to actually do something with the population is maybe to just get that much population out that you still have some free ones, even if you don't have a happy face solution. So maybe the yellow token and the ability to get even more populations out might make it that he still has some free populations to work with, and that he can avoid uprising issues with just getting more and more population out. And so he will go for the ocean liner. He will increase his population 2 times, goes for warrior to be at 10 strength, and then Alex Darwin, and if he had an additional civil action, he could have taken the rifleman, he could have taken the scientific method, he could have taken the wave of nationalism, the architecture, so definitely a lot of cards that could have been interesting. He could have just built a step, so at least it still did damage to one opponent, but I do think it, of course, would have been really great for me if it would have been revealed just at the start of H3. But yeah, sadly the event deck moved a bit too quickly, and I also took the risk. But now we can actually see that we had a deck of full H2 events, but now there's a deck coming that is actually consisting of 2 H1 events. I'm not sure if I have seen this already before, something like this. So if I would have pushed the Iconoclasm in the next deck, it would have just taken quite some time, and maybe then it also wouldn't be that impactful. So I was at least happy that it still did a bit of damage to Eske's position, but of course I would have hoped to see it revealed in H3. Now it's ciufile's turn. He will actually go for a blunder against me, and I have to make a decision here. Either I can discard 4 cards that are no colonization card, or 1 colonization card. Basically, I could only keep 1 non-colonization card if I want to defend in a different way. And maybe I could do it, but I just wanted to keep some different options open. The Politics of Strength could be a really important card in case I want to overcome the culture gap that I'm having towards my opponents with a bit more military-oriented play. The popularization of science could be very strong in case maybe I get something like early computers. A war could maybe still be interesting. The tactic is also still not bad to have, so I was at the end willing to give up on a colonization card to leave myself a little bit more open in regards on what cards I have in hand. Ciufile this turn will go for drama, goes for a bit of a greedy play. He could have gone into coal this turn, but instead wants to have the drama available. Doesn't really need the happy face, it's just for the 2 culture production. It feels a bit greedy for me. I'm not sure if he really needs it, and if maybe getting the coal going quicker is more important, especially because it maybe also now delays him being able to go for selective breeding or something. Not really, I think he would have been at 0+4 if he would have gone for the coal now, but an interesting decision, maybe showing that he is a bit of a greedy player, but he has the Michi Castle to protect himself and maybe can then go into coal at the next turn. Takes the breakthrough and then also the cavalryman. Maybe he also wanted to leave himself open to get into military tech, but I think at the moment no one is really threatening that much strength, and so there's not a big danger from a war, I think. Moemoe seeds, and event revealed is the Independence Declaration. I am the weakest still, and I will now lose another happy face from the historic territory, but at least I have those team sports lying around, meaning it's maybe not too bad, as I want to build one of those at my next turn anyway. Moemoe will now go for the selective breeding, starts some food production, goes for 2 upgrades, takes the rifleman and the cannons, has just the military techs available now. Now it is my turn, and I again, similar to the Iconoclasm, had to make a decision here on whether I am willing to push an event that could potentially be very strong for me, or if I want to keep it in hand and maybe push it later. It could then also still be very strong, but when we take a look at my position, and it's now the start of H3, we can maybe take a look at the overview at the end of Ciufile's turn, but just very quickly, I think I have a very, very decent economy here. But I'm lacking a bit behind in culture, and with that I feel a little bit pressured on maybe starting to generate a little bit of additional culture with maybe just continuous seeding. And I at the end was actually willing to seed the popularization of science here, because what I will actually do this turn, I will seed it. I could get really punished by a happy face related event or also a strength event, but I will remain, or I think I actually won't remain weakest anyway, so I will get stronger. I will fix my happy faces. I could have gotten punished, maybe I shouldn't have seeded. But luckily I do not get punished. Instead the arms industry is revealed, which punishes me a little bit because I would develop a cannon this turn, but at least I don't get hit really badly by something. First of all, I will definitely build a team sports this turn, and then there are 2 leaders in the row. Of course I thought about just going for Napoleon for 1 and then leaving myself open for some other leaders. But at the moment, I of course have the conquistadors, I have over territory politics for strength. Maybe I could do something with Napoleon, but I don't really have a way to build up such a strong military that I can know for certain that I can maybe build up towards a big war at the end. Maybe I could still try doing something like that, but I felt like I'm not that much behind in culture that I have to go down that road, and at the end I actually went for Einstein for 3. Of course, taking him for 3 is somewhat expensive, but at least I just skipped the H2 leader completely here, meaning that I am taking for 3, but if I take Napoleon for 1, I again have to spend at least once or more civil actions later on to take an H3 leader, so at least I'm saving that 1 civil action now on taking Napoleon, making maybe the investment into Einstein a bit cheaper, and also Einstein, I have only the alchemy, so it maybe doesn't look like an ideal leader, but I just think he still could be very solid and maybe one with the biggest potential for me, because I don't have theaters at the moment for Malene and Chaplin. I could of course get movies at some point. Marie Curie could be fine. Sid Meier, I need computers if I want to make him good. Churchill is fine. Gandhi, maybe not really what I'm looking towards here unless I somehow get in trouble. So Einstein at the moment is just giving me a bit of additional science production and allows myself to start some culture with just naturally developing some technologies, but as soon as there will be something like multimedia or computers available, I can just get a really big boost. Sadly, there's no spaceflight or Manhattan Project, so maybe some payoff cards are not available, but I do think Einstein could just be quite strong for me potentially, and even if I don't get computers or multimedia during the next turns, he still is somewhat solid. Maybe I can at an average develop 1 technology per turn, then he's giving me 1 science and 3 culture per turn, which I do think is also still very reasonable. So I at the end was willing to go for Einstein, and even though it is a bit expensive, and then I will develop a cannon, build 1, getting out of corruption. I could just increase my population to maybe be a bit more civil action efficient, but there were some reasons why I didn't do it. First of all, I don't have knowledge about all happy face related events, meaning that I could get punished for increasing my population. And also, if I save up some food, it could be that maybe the Red Cross is an option. I have the Masonry, so maybe I could take it, build 4 steps, and get a reasonable amount of culture, and maybe a way to catch up in culture during the next turn. And the Rifleman at least opens myself up for H3 tactics, and potentially building up a very big military if I get the right tactic could also still be a very nice way to maybe win this game. So I took the Rifleman here, also taking them away from Eske, who is a bit in trouble with his happy faces, as you can see now. So that was my turn. I discarded the historic territory and I was very happy about my draw. I don't get an impact, but I do get a positional army, and that really makes it that I have some big strength potential, and if I also get a war and maybe air forces, that could have some very big potential for me. So I was very happy that I have now a very good tactic for me to work with. Now it's Eske's turn. He will finish the ocean liner service. With that he can fix his uprising issue, and I was a bit unhappy to see that after my turn there was a copy of computers revealed, and thanks to Darwin, Eske can actually still take it after having finished the ocean liner, allowing him to maybe at the next turn build up some very big science production, and also making it that only 1 copy of computers is left for me, which are maybe a little bit easier for me to implement than a multimedia. Also Sid Meier and Marie Curie are coming down the row for Eske, so if he goes into computers anyway, those could be some interesting leaders for him. Ciufile Seeds, the national bride, is revealed, giving him even more culture. He at his turn will go for the coal, can go for 2 upgrades, is now at 8 resource production, takes the efficient upgrade and some frugalities that he can maybe use once he gets into selective breeding. And then we are now at the beginning of H3, at the end of Ciufile's turn, so all players had the same amount of turns, so we can maybe take a quick look at the overview. And as you can see, I have a very decent economy, but I'm also a bit behind in culture. Einstein will maybe help me catching up a little bit, but I definitely have to find some ways, either with impacts, maybe with a wonder, maybe with a war. I do think I have some strong options, but all of the opponents at the moment are in front of me in culture, which is a bit worrying. moemoe has the potential to maybe build up easily some more culture production with Bach. Eske can go into computers, can maybe also set himself up with a very strong economy. And Ciufile, who went for a bit of an interesting setup, a nice Michelangelo play, delayed his economy upgrades for quite a bit. Now he is sitting at 8 resource production, has a solid amount of science production, soon can maybe get into the selective breeding, has 2 frugalities, an efficient upgrade, and with that is maybe in a position where he actually can defend his culture lead very nicely. So I think I have a position that definitely allows for some different win conditions and has some potential, but I'm behind, and I have to see if I actually can overcome the gap, because the others of course will also not won't waste their time during their turn. moemoe's turn. It's now moemoe's turn, and a scientific breakthrough is revealed, at least going in for Einstein really gives me now an additional science immediately, also with the scientific breakthrough. moemoe then will go into opera, builds 1, takes the reserves, the revolutionary radio, doesn't take the bro spots. I was somewhat hoping that maybe he would take those, so that those aren't available for Eske. Now I could take them away, but it would be a bit of a hate draft. And during my turn, as you can see, there's actually the military theory coming down the road, and that gives me potentially an interesting option for my turn. Because I have this positional army tactic, I can take the military theory, develop it, I can build a cannon, reveal this tactic, and I have this war in hand, meaning I can go for a war with definitely a respectable amount of strength. I can even also build a team sports or another cannon potentially. So I definitely considered just going for this war. The question is, which is a good opponent to go for the war against? And as you can see, I will actually go against Eske. It's a bit of a question. Both moemoe and Eske are in a position where the best tactic that they could have would be the mobile artillery. But only one of them, or maybe even none, could have this tactic, but of course I don't know which one. There is maybe a bit of an indicator that Eske could have it, because he had a chance to take Rifleman for only 1 civil action with Darwin, but didn't take it, so that definitely could be a bit of an indicator, but maybe he also has fortifications or something, which is not as great for him in this situation as the mobile artillery. moemoe, during his turn, can go for 2 cannons and could potentially have the mobile artillery tactic that would give him +6 from the tactic, +6 from the units, would put him at 25. I can go up to 27, so I could potentially win a war against him. The problem is there's a copy of satellites coming down the row. If that is available for one civil action for him, he just could do both and then potentially win the war. And that is just likely that the satellites could still be available for him. And with that, I just think it's a bit too risky to go against moemoe. And so instead, I went against Eske here. But Eske maybe requires myself to actually go for a bit of a hate draft with those professional sports, because I think there's the potential to actually put him in a very annoying situation for himself. So I will take the military theory, develop it, increase my population 2 times, build a cannon. If I would have declared war against moemoe, I could have now built an additional team sports going up to 25, but now I made the decision to actually cut the first copy of bro sports, because if the second one is maybe now taken away by moemoe or is just very late in the deck, I do think Eske could have some trouble with his population situation. How is his ability to defend? If he goes for 2 cannons and has the mobile artillery tactic, he will go up to plus 12, which is only 22, which is not enough, and he is also low in military actions, meaning he, even if he has the necessary resource, but he doesn't have the military actions to really do a lot more with his actions. He could potentially also have the Hussars tactic, go into tanks, then he gets a bit more from the units, but a bit less from the tactic. So 2 less from the tactic, but 2 more from the tanks. That would put him at 24, which is also not enough really for him to win the war. And also, building 2 cannons would actually require Eske to destroy something. So he needs to destroy something, would maybe still lose the war, lose another yellow token, with getting no bro spots, could have some really big problems. And yeah, so that's that. If he has the mobile artillery, then however, even with there are no bro spots revealed, there are some ways how he can actually tie the war. So it could be that the war is not successful in that it gives me a yellow token, but Eske could either also go into satellites and cannons, which would put him at 25 if he has the mobile artillery, or he could go for Marie Curie, go for 1 upgrade to computers and also for 2 cannons, and then tie the war. But in all of those scenarios, he has to destroy something, maybe a lab, or maybe one of the farms with having the ocean liner, to actually be able to go for that defense. And then there's of course the chance that he doesn't have the mobile artillery available, which then could cause some really big troubles for him. There's of course one danger, and that is that maybe the second copy of Bro Sports could be revealed, because that would allow Eske, if he has the mobile artillery tactic, also to actually just barely win the war. So it's a bit of a risk that I'm taking, but I thought it's maybe worth the risk, because this war, even if it ends in a tie if Eske has the mobile artillery, it just could be a distraction, because if he doesn't get disrupted here, I do think maybe it could just be very strong to get into computers, build up some very strong economy. And now he might get disrupted from that, and that could be beneficial for me. Of course, it's only hitting 1 opponent, but I thought a Bro Sports is at least some solid card for me, because having nice arenas is nice for quite some impacts. I need some technologies for Einstein anyway. Of course, ideally I can take all of them for 1 civil action at some point, but at least I have another technology in hand. I can upgrade the arena, I can prepare for some impacts, get some additional strength in case I go for a more military focused game plan with hoping to draw some cards now and maybe hoping to get a war. I then could have a chance to maybe sneak in a bit more strength with the Bro Sports. So at the end I thought it's of course a hate draft. I probably wouldn't do it without Eske being in that situation, but it's a hate draft that could have some severe consequences, and also getting hit by the war could just be quite annoying for Eske, while for me building the cannon, revealing the tactic is just a relatively natural thing to do anyway, and I still draw 3 cards, I don't miss out on anything, so it's not a big cost for me to go for all of this. I still leave myself flexible to maybe switch into some other strategies still, but there's the chance that Eske gets hit very heavily, and if I don't disrupt him, he starts building up some computers here, I was fearing could just get into a really strong position. I draw 2 impacts, the impact of harmony and the impact of colonies, both not great but maybe seedable. Also I draw the modern army tactic, and I was very unhappy to see that sadly one of the 3 revealed cards is actually the second copy of Bro Sports. That is of course not ideal, as now Eske, as said, can actually build one of the Bro Sports. And if he has the mobile artillery tactic, which he sadly, as you can see, has. He is now 26 strength, wins the war by 1, and will actually lose the yellow token, which is actually quite a bit annoying for me. I can fix my uprising issues with building a team sports, but I can't increase pop. Maybe I have some issues to get out of corruption. So there was a risk with that war, but yeah, the chance that the second copy of Bro Sports is revealed during those 3 cards is not that high, and if it isn't revealed, I think Eske can go for a tie, but that wouldn't be that bad for me, and it would cause some issues for Eske. That being said, even with winning the war, I felt like Eske could still be the player who is in the worst end on regards to that war, because while he has now won the war, he is at 1+2 science production, especially if he doesn't get a copy of Revolutionary Ideas soon, and his computers are really delayed with that war. So I think he still gets hit by that war relatively heavily, but I also get hit by it, and that is of course a problem against the 2 other opponents. I was not happy about that outcome. If I would have known that, I wouldn't have gone for that, despite knowing that it disrupts Eske, because he's only 1 opponent, and so not an ideal outcome. Maybe a bit unlucky that the second copy of Bro Sports was revealed immediately. Now Eske has his happy face fixed instead of having a lot of unhappy workers lying around, and I will actually lose a yellow token. And the only small benefit here is that Eske at least delayed his computers by quite a bit, which will maybe limit him quite a bit during his next turns. Now it's Ciufile's turn. He will seed, opens the vast territory, and now I was again a bit more happy because I'm actually able to win it for just 1 swordsman. Now I get 3 yellow tokens back, meaning my yellow token situation is now looking a lot better. Again, I will lose 1, but definitely it looks quite a bit better. And with that, I was again more happy about the outcome, because now at least I have the disruption against Eske, but also have in total 2 additional yellow tokens at a relatively cheap price, also some additional food. So now again, I was quite happy, or not quite happy. I still would have preferred it, of course, if the Bro Sports wouldn't have been available for Eske, but yeah, definitely that helps me out a lot, winning this territory for only 1 swordsman. Ciufile will take the tanks. He has already the cavalryman, but he also has a lot of resources. Could maybe be an indicator that he could have something like hussars, but even without that tactic, it could make sense just investing into the unit that gives more strength per unit if resources aren't really a limiting factor, and if maybe population is actually a limiting factor, with Ciufile delaying his selective breeding upgrades for even longer. moemoe will go for riflemen, he will go for cannons, goes for the Hollywood, which has some potential, and then ends his turn, has the Napoleonic army available. And as you can see, that second copy of computers is coming down the row, and that is something that I really wanted to go into at my next turn. It will give me a very big boost, and we shouldn't forget, of course, that the popularization of science is coming during those 4H2 events, meaning I could get a huge culture gain against my opponents. If I go for 2 upgrades, I will be at 16 science production, so the popularization of science basically would be like just a very big impact. So I really wanted to go into computers, but at the beginning of my turn I needed to ask myself the question, am I willing to push or not? Both of those impacts are maybe not really push worthy, at least not at the risk of the popularization of science being revealed, but I am still a bit behind in culture. The politics of strength could be a very nice event. I might not start drawing some impacts at the end of my turn, so missing out on a politics phase. I could of course still push the politics of strength to the next turn, but maybe I will then start drawing some impacts, maybe we'll start drawing some wars. I just felt missing out on the politics phase could potentially be quite bad for me. But if I see it now, there's a 25% chance that the popularization of science would be revealed, which would cost me 8 culture. But of course, if I don't see it, I miss out on 2 cultures. It's only 6 culture. It's only a 25% chance. Politics of strength could be very nice if I go now for a bit more strength, maybe with helping me drawing a war. Then it would also be nice to maybe reveal the event deck forward as quickly as possible. And with all of that, I was at the end willing to take the risk, push the politics of strength, and I was really hoping that the popularization of science will stay in the deck so that I can get a really big culture score out of it with going for computers this turn. I first of all will sadly lose 1 yellow token to Eske. I will push, And it's not a politics of strength, instead a crime wave, which will actually cause two of my opponents to lose some culture, so I was very happy about the outcome, and now we'll go for the computers, develop them, go for 2 upgrades. Of course, it's maybe a bit overkill, the amount of production that I have, but I have Einstein, I can just develop a lot of technologies. I have not drawn a war yet, I don't know if that will be an option. I don't have air forces yet, so just being able to score a lot of points with developing some technologies, maybe also being nicely prepared for some impacts, and then also getting the big boost for the popularization of science, I think are just more than enough reasons to go for those 2 computer upgrades. After doing that, I have 1 civil action left. I could just increase my population to get out of corruption, but instead I wanted to take 1 more card from the row, and then I went for 1 cannon to get out of corruption, making myself a bit stronger. If Eske doesn't get stronger during his turn, maybe there's at least a chance that I will be the strongest during my turn, and also after Eske's turn then again. And if I do get a war, which I was hoping towards, maybe I will need a cannon soon anyway, and building the cannon and with that getting out of corruption will allow myself to spend 1 civil action to take the satellites. The satellites, of course, maybe not the most relevant technology, but the thing is, with in an Einstein game with that much production, it will end up happening that I will just take and develop some technologies that I maybe don't even need. And now I have a chance to take and then maybe later on develop technology that very cheaply will give me 3 additional strength, potentially could still help me to win a colony even though it's quite late for that, and also scores nicely for some impacts. It's a very cheap technology, so I do think the satellites here are quite nice. I could also consider the engineering. I have already the masonry, but I could still maybe, it could have the potential to save me some civil actions and also resources if I build some H3 buildings. But I was hoping also with the politics of strength in the deck now that maybe the next turn, if I go for Riflemen and maybe satellites, then the politics of strength will be revealed. Especially if I get the air forces, that I still have a shot at maybe getting a war going, and then I rather wanted to have the 3 strength from the satellites instead of the engineering, which maybe would excel more in a more peaceful game. And satellites also helps for impact of variety, it's a bit cheaper, so at the end I went for the satellites, but the engineering definitely also a potential option. I definitely don't need a revolutionary idea here. I considered if I should take it as a removal from Eske, but he maybe got already hit hard enough by now not being able to go into computers. The next turn it will be somewhat late anyway, still nice for him to get this card, definitely, but I was not willing to go for a denial here. I draw some cards, and I was very happy that I actually draw 2 wars here. With that I have some good military potential, and especially if I should get air forces, maybe I can be able to pull off 1 or even 2 wars against my opponents. And with that I also was in general relatively happy about my position. As concedes, the wealthy territory is revealed. I don't have colonization cards, so I can't bid that much, but I'm not in danger of an aggression, so I didn't really care about hiding the amount of colonization cards that I have. If for some reason all of the players passed, then it could still be nice to win it. At the end, ciufile wins it. At least he has to send all of his swordsmen away, which is somewhat costly for him, but could also be an indicator that he can make a transition into a new tactic, either mechanized army or maybe or mobile artillery, or he indeed has the hussars tactic available. Eske this turn will take the International Red Cross. He will have 9 food saved up at his next turn, meaning he can build 3 steps, and he doesn't really need the food in order to increase his population because he already has the ocean liner service and 2 free population. He then takes the revolutionary idea in order to be able to maybe go for computers at the next turn. The strategic territory is revealed again. I can't bid that much for it. At the end, Eske is able to win it, at least has to send 2 warriors away, but with him being on mobile artillery, that should be nice for him. And now he is actually at 28 instead of 26 strength, meaning that if moemoe seeds as well, if I want to push something into the deck, would be at the risk of not winning the politics of strength at the end. ciufile takes the military build-up, goes for some food upgrades now with the frugalities. That will mean that he can get a lot of population out at the next turn. He doesn't build a step of the Red Cross this turn, has indeed a hussars tactic, is now at 19 strength, not really that much in danger of an aggression because of the Meiji. Of course, sacrificing a tank would be very costly, but maybe the others don't want to waste a politics action against him. moemoe seeds, the event deck is indeed flipped. The popularization of science is revealed, which I was very happy to see. I gained plus 14 against Eske, so delaying his computers really gave me a big benefit, at least for that event. And then also against the others, it gives me a very big amount of culture. Momo plays the revolutionary idea with the Silk Road bonus, goes for the democracy, maybe a little bit risky because it will make it that he doesn't have enough science to go into air forces at the next turn. He takes Chaplain, takes the air forces, but has not enough to get into air force at the next turn, and I will actually punish that during my turn because I will declare war now. As an alternative for my politics phase, I could basically only push some of those cards, but first of all, both of those impacts are not really that great for me. The impact of colonies would be a seedable one, but really not that great. Only seedable because I actually get a 3 culture for seeding it. And Impact of Harmony, maybe I can plan towards it, but especially Eske with the Ocean Liner has the potential to make it very big, and also the others could make it a very fine impact at least. So I thought if I don't go for a war now, I just don't have a nice use for my politics phase, and while it won't be the biggest war, and while it is actually a bit costly, I just wanted to use my politics phase, wanted to apply some pressure on my opponents, the others maybe have to respond, and I still have the second war in hand, meaning that if there are air forces revealed, maybe at the next turn I can still maybe hope towards building up a very big war, maybe with air forces later on. So without a second war, it would have been a bit more of a harder decision, but if with having 2 in hand, I went for the war against Momo. And then the question is how to execute the war exactly. Of course, I definitely want to go into Rifleman. I will go for 2 upgrades. I could also build a Rifleman directly, but I will rather go for building a rocket actually directly. First I thought I will go for Rifleman, I will build an additional unit, and then I will go into Bro Sports and for 1 upgrade. But then we are in a situation where Momo, if an economic progress is revealed, without the economic progress, he has 11 resources, which is not enough to go for another army. Or he could maybe go for an outdated army, but then it's maybe better to just upgrade this and build some more units. But without the economic progress, he can't go for another army. With the economic progress, he has 15 resources, meaning that he could just build another army, which would put him at plus 6, plus 8, plus 15, so 43. And with the Bro Sports play, there was the danger that I could lose the war, if I remember my calculations correctly. But if I go for rockets, I can go for 2 more strength compared to the Bro Sports play, and that at the end made it that I was willing to go for it, so that there is no danger of me losing the war, unless there's a combination of bad things. If there's economic progress and a military alliance offered, I could still lose the war, but that's not that likely to happen, so I was willing to take that risk. I increased my population. I will develop the satellites for 3 additional strength. I will take the rockets, develop the rockets, scoring some culture with Einstein for developing 3 technologies this turn already. I take the reserves, I play the reserves with the Harvard College, I build a rocket, and I upgrade 1 rocket going up to 44 strength, meaning that even if Momo goes up to 43 strength, he can't win the war against me. If the economic progress is revealed, I think he could actually build another army and a warrior, but it would also require some destruction, so at least it would be bad for him, but of course an economic progress would not be ideal for me to see here. This turn is somewhat costly because ideally I would have liked to also get a second copy of reserves at least, but the nice thing is I have 10 resources the next turn, which is just exactly enough to go for 2 more Riflemen, meaning depending on how nicely my opponents will prepare, I definitely have the chance to immediately go for the second war the next turn. Only problem is that if I increase my population 2 times, one of those population will be unhappy, meaning I might have to destroy something in order to build a Rifleman. The thing is there are 2 copies of efficient upgrade left, and if one of them is in a row, then with the Harvard College I could actually develop the Bro Sports, go for an upgrade for free, increase population 2 times, and then go for 2 Riflemen without destroying anything. And so that could be an interesting option to have if one of those efficient upgrades will be on the row at the next turn, or if maybe for some reason there's another yellow card still in the row, like one of those. But urban growths are not left, so the efficient upgrades are maybe the most likely to be available, or maybe if the last copy of reserves is revealed. So that was my turn. I can start maybe getting a bit of culture out of a war. I put some pressure on my opponents, they have to respond, and there's a chance that Momo could tie in the war. There's even a chance he could win it if there's a pact involved, but other than that, I was hoping that I will win the war, or if there's a tie, that it will at least be very costly for Momo. It was also somewhat costly for me, but I was willing to take that risk here. Another bad thing is, of course, that I won't draw any cards, so I won't have any aggressions or maybe a very strong impact available, but I was hoping that with winning the politics of strength, maybe I then there have a chance to get some nice cards. Eske will offer the international truce. It's already a bit late, but there will still be some turns left, and sadly Eske will soon have 4 wonders. ciufile has 4 wonders, so definitely there will be some culture scored with this pact, so of course I was not too happy to see this between the two opponents. Eske will this turn build 3 stages of the Red Cross. Interestingly, none of his opponents spend a civil action and food to build one of the steps, meaning now he will build 3 of them, takes the reserves, maybe has the option to even finish the Red Cross in the next turn now, builds a cannon, a knight, and thanks to the patriotism he has enough resources to threaten to go for 2 more armies. He doesn't have air forces, so that's important for him that he just threatens enough strength here. Sadly, as you can see, there is a military alliance actually offered from ciufile to moemoe, so he helps him out a little bit, but moemoe gets hit by this war. I still have a very solid economy, maybe some different strong impacts that I could have, so I think it is a fair evaluation if maybe ciufile is a bit more afraid from me than from moemoe at this position, especially if moemoe should now lose the war, and then he maybe says he prefers it if I steal a little bit less culture from moemoe's, but of course I was not happy to see it. ciufile will play the military build-up for 9 additional resources, a very strong yellow card for him. Will take the air forces, increases his population a bunch of time, takes Churchill in hand, and then builds 2 tanks going up to 37 strength. And with the MHG Castle, he should be relatively nicely prepared for wars. Maybe with the patriotism could still somehow try to set up a war for himself too. moemoe doesn't see it, so there's no economic progress revealed. I was relieved, because if that would now be revealed, I don't know if it is in the deck, but if it would now be revealed, there would have been the danger to actually lose the war, but that gladly doesn't happen. Instead, moemoe will go for an upgrade to Opera, which is again a little bit greedy, because the 3 additional resources that he could have had with not upgrading it could maybe made a difference on my decision that I will do during my next politics phase. So he was a little bit greedy with democracy and now this upgrade, which maybe punishes him at the end. But now he will go for this defense, takes both of the reserves. With that, he is definitely not badly prepared for defending, but as we will see during my turn, I will find a way to actually go for a second war against him. The thing is, I still have only 2 impacts in hand that aren't really that great. Politics of Strength hasn't been revealed yet, so I don't have maybe the option to now seed a nice impact. It was still a very close decision for me on what I actually want to do with my next politics phase, because the way how I will go for that war is that I will go for the fundamentalism, and that will mean that I won't take the last copy of air forces here. But it's definitely an idea to, instead of declaring a war now, to maybe delay declaring it, take the air forces and build up for an even bigger war the next turn. The problem being that I don't have enough resources to go for 2 armies with 2 air forces, only for 2 armies with 1 air force, which is a respectable amount of strength, but especially with my opponents also having another turn to prepare for that, I just felt like the war won't end up being a lot bigger than when I just go for a war this turn. And if I don't go for a war this turn, again I have some difficulties to actually spend my politics phase efficiently. And with going for a war, I again was hoping to get at least a little bit of culture going with a war. Maybe the politics of strength will be revealed before my next turn. Also, I will draw some cards actually at the end of my turn, so maybe the next turn I will have something nice to seed, or maybe even I draw another war which I can go for, maybe an aggression. And if I go for war the next turn, it will take some civil actions away in order to maybe execute it, and also takes up more resources in total to build 2 riflemen and an air force instead of now only building 2 riflemen. And with going for the war now, I, even without any help from either yellow cards or events, have enough resources to finish the fast food chains in 2 turns. And I thought that I actually could have a good shot at getting the fast food chains, which is the last wonder available at my next turn, because Eske has the Red Cross, doesn't have enough civil actions to take it. ciufile could potentially take it, but it would basically take the whole of his turn. If it's available in the 3 civil action area, it's just all that he does, and especially with me putting some military pressure on, maybe he rather wants to build up some more military instead of just spending his whole turn on taking the wonder. moemoe has the Hollywood, so I was hoping that at my next turn there should be a very good chance that I get the fast food chains, meaning now I can go for a war. Hopefully at the next turn I will have something nice to seed, or maybe an aggression to play. And ideally also with the politics of strength, maybe 2 of those things, so that at the next 2 politics phases I can go for 2 impacts or aggressions, and then finish the fast food chain, score some more culture with just developing a bunch of technologies with Einstein, and I was hoping that that maybe could be enough to close the culture gap to my opponents. So that was the plan, that was the reason why I went for war this turn, so that I can use my politics actions efficiently, and so that I the next turn am completely free to just take the fast food chains and have enough resources to finish it then in 2 turns. So I go for the fundamentalism. That means that air force are left for Eske, meaning he should have no troubles to defend himself against potential future wars. But sadly, with not being able to go for an upgrade to Bro Sports, there's also no efficient upgrade on the card row, but even if it would, I kind of have to go for the fundamentalism, because otherwise I just miss out on 4 strength, which could actually end up being relevant. So I destroy this farm. If I stayed at +3, I don't get another population out anyway. I will get into minus production soon, but I have enough resources to rebuild 1 farm and go for the fast food chains. Maybe there's still some hope left that I get, for example, the engineering genius. So yeah, with that I went for this decision. I go for building the 2 riflemen, which puts me at 68 strength. When we take a look at moemoe's situation, he has 2 reserves in hand. With the Silk Road bonus, has a total of 15 resources available, meaning he can go for 2 air forces, but that only puts him at +14, +24, 63, so 5 behind me. If there's an economic progress revealed, he gets +4, then he has 19 resources, but that is not enough to build 2 air forces, a cannon and a knight. However, if he wouldn't have gone for that upgrade during his turn, then with an economic progress he could have threatened to go for 2 air forces and a cannon and a knight, and then I think I wouldn't have gone for the war, because that would have been just too big of a risk for me, and maybe I would have then tried to go for a bigger war the next turn or just try something peaceful. But with an economic progress not being enough to allow him winning the war, I went for this war here. Maybe it was still the correct decision to go for that. Maybe he had to play it a bit more greedy, but maybe I think he got a bit punished here. But of course, it's not guaranteed that I have a second war, and just doing that upgrade with Bach is just too tempting. Maybe. The nice thing about this was that I will still draw 3 cards, and I was very happy actually about the cards that I drew here. Now I have some nice impacts to work with. The impact of progress is actually very strong, especially against Eske and ciufile, and I have another war, which could be nice, and also the impact of variety is not as strong as progress, but also very playable, and also strong, I would even say. Eske seeds, and there's actually an economic progress revealed, so now I was very happy that, or I was not really happy to see it, as moemoe might defend now a little bit better, but maybe he will also use that progress, economic progress, to maybe be able to still finish the Hollywood at the next turn if he maybe gets this engineering genius. So there's a chance that maybe he won't use the resources for a better defense, but instead to maybe be able to finish the Hollywood. This last turn, Eske builds a step, takes the air forces, goes for Marie Curie after having saved the civil action, plays the revolutionary idea, and goes for an upgrade to computers. Again, none of his opponents even built a step during his the last turn cycle. So far he has built all of those steps. Maybe he has the chance to even finish it if that trend remains. Ciufile seeds, the fast food chains are not revealed yet, meaning he doesn't even have the option to take it. So that's that, but also there's maybe a danger that maybe a few amount of cards could stay in the deck before my turn. So I was hoping that after his turn it will soon be revealed, giving me the chance to take it. Ciufile seeds, the civil unrest is revealed, not ideal for me. Sadly I will lose for culture, but yeah, that's of course what you have to expect when you are with some unhappy workers, and I definitely was for some turns I had some unhappy workers, so I get now a bit punished for it. Ciufile will just increase his population a bunch of times, is actually willing to destroy a lab, plays the patriotism, and just builds a bunch of tanks going up to 67 strength. Luckily just not enough to overtake me, so that I still hopefully will be able to win this politics of strength that is the last H2 event in the deck. He doesn't elect Churchill, maybe he doesn't want to be the Nobel Prizes, doesn't want to have those available, because those would maybe be a lot more beneficial for me than for ciufile, and with me in winning another war, maybe ciufile saw me as one of the main contenders potentially. Now it's moemoe's turn. He will go for an Air Force, will go for 2 Air Forces, could now use the resource from the economic progress to maybe build another cannon for 3 additional strength, but as I was hoping, he will instead make it that he can finish to Hollywood at the end, which I think makes sense, because that will score him more culture than he would have gained by defending a little bit better. 3 cards will be revealed now. The fast food chains are not on the row yet, so now I was really hoping that it will be revealed so they can take it, finish it the next turn, maybe develop some techs and just score some nice points, also with being able to see those impacts during my last 2 turns. But unfortunately, the fast food chains are one of the 2 last cards in the deck, meaning that I won't have a chance to take them, which means that I maybe have to make a bit of a new plan here. First, of course, I needed to check if it maybe is an option to go for a war, but with me not having taken the last copy of Air Force, not being able to go for another army, only an outdated one, first of all, that would be extremely costly. I would have to destroy a lot of things, and all of the opponents are somewhat nicely prepared to defend, so it was just not really an option, and I have 2 good impacts, one very good one with the impact of progress, so it was very clear for me that I want to push that into the deck. The politics of strength will then be revealed, meaning with the additional draws I have a chance to maybe get another good impact. Jackpot impact would be the impact of technology. I will develop a lot of technology during my last 2 turns, meaning I will end up with 9 technologies. Truthfully, at this point, for example, is only 1, so that could really be a way for me to maybe overtake ciufile if I should maybe be a bit lucky and draw that one particular impact. The politics of strength is revealed. Sadly, I don't get a single impact out of that. I still have the card draw at the end of my turn, with it still being H3, but for now I haven't drawn a new impact. 2 more wars, meaning I had now a total of 5 wars drawn, which is maybe a bit relevant, because one nice thing that ciufile could do during his next turn would be to actually go for a war if the military theory is available for him. If that isn't taken away by Eske, then he could go for military theory, like Churchill, go for 2 more tanks, has even the Meiji Castle to sacrifice, but now there are only 2 wars available left in the deck that he could actually have. But with that potential, and with me not knowing if Eske takes the military theory away or not, I had to be a bit careful. I take the movies in hand. I definitely want the option to build one, especially if I see the impact of variety. That makes it a bit better, but also for some other impacts it could be very nice to have the movies and just for the culture reduction as well, of course. If I build one, however, I don't have enough resources to go for a second army, or for a third army, for another army at my next turn, meaning that I wouldn't be safe from a potential war from ciufile. So I can't really build a movie. Building a movie sadly also wouldn't be enough to get me out of corruption. So instead of building a movie, I instead took and developed a civil service this turn. That actually gets me out of corruption, meaning I have more resources available for the next turn, and with not spending some civil actions on maybe building a movie and instead getting my civil action back after developing it, I have enough civil actions to also take the revolutionary ideal and the mechanized agriculture, meaning I can go for 3 more technologies at my next turn, scoring myself 9 culture with Einstein, with a little bit of hope remaining that maybe I could just at the last possible moment maybe draw an impact of technology. And at the next turn I generally can maybe prepare as nicely for impacts as possible, going for movies. Maybe I can make a nice balance with also going for a second farm, prepare for impact of agriculture, fix my happy faces. So I was hoping that at the next turn I can at least score some culture with Einstein, prepare nicely for impacts. Impact of progress is very nice. Maybe I can get another very good impact. If not, I can at least see the good impact with the impact of variety, and maybe that could still be enough. The problem is now the fast food chains might be taken by one of Eske or ciufile instead of me being able to get it, and then it could be a bit tricky to also catch up that culture. With me taking that many cards from the row, I also influenced it a little bit on which player might get the fast food chains at the end, because now with having taken that amount of cards, it is a 50-50 shot whether the fast food chains will land on that spot or on that spot, and only if it is in the 2 civil action area, Eske has even enough civil actions to take it. So now he could have a chance to take it if I take less cards. He doesn't have a chance to take it, and ciufile might take it. I wasn't even certain what I should be hoping towards. Maybe I should hope towards Eske taking it, but at least taking a lot of his remaining actions away that he has for the last 2 turns, and truthfully, hopefully not having a war and then not being able to go for a wonder probably leaves myself with the best chances to finish first, but maybe also with a bigger danger of finishing third. So yeah, but maybe even if the fast food chains land at that spot, it could end up that maybe Eske feels it a bit Feels like it could be a bit too risky, especially if he's vulnerable to aggressions. Maybe he will rather prepare for a bit more and go for a bit more strength instead of spending all of his civil actions to take the fast food chains. With the last civil action, I will play the Revolutionary Idea with the Harvard College to be a civil action efficient, as at the next turn I really might need a lot of civil actions if we want to build some stuff. Sadly, as you can see, I also didn't draw new impact with my last 3 draws. Now I can be very happy that I actually did draw this impact of variety earlier, but I was a little bit disappointed. I was hoping that maybe I could draw an impact that is even better. Ideally, of course, the impact of tech, but of course, you can't really hope for one particular impact. I had some draws, but that's still not something that you can really count on. But I was a bit disappointed about the last draws that I had, but at least before that, I did draw those wars. I did draw 2 strong impacts, so overall, it's probably fine. Eske will not go for the fast food chains, instead goes for a bit of strength, goes for the military theory, which also will score some points for him for the impact of progress and the impact of variety. But I was a bit unhappy to actually see this impact of happiness revealed now. Eske just went for building one more pro sport, and sadly for both moemoe and me, after the age has ended, we have quite a bunch of unhappy workers. And now, of course, we could have maybe fixed it. Yeah, maybe that was potentially a mistake. Maybe instead of playing the Rev Idea, I should have built a team sports. The problem is I have a very limited amount of population, and I thought that at the next turn it could be better to build a movie, maybe just build a second movie, destroy something, or maybe upgrade the arena to pro sports, and committing another population there could be bad. And I felt with not getting the fast food chains, I need to take some risks in order to maybe then catch up the points that I need at the end. But sadly, I get heavily punished, and with that, that is a very big swing for Eske, meaning we have to see whether I have enough at the end to catch up to him. But I have 2 impacts. There are some other impacts which could potentially be nice for me, so definitely some hope still there to at least finish second, finishing first, with ciufile now getting fast food chains, still having endowment, and going into their final impacts already without the fast food chains with a very big impact. That could end up being a bit tricky. For that, I maybe would need to hope that one of the opponents has seeded the impact of tech, because that would be a very big one against ciufile. Then I would have a very big progress and a very big tech against him. Even then, it might not be enough, but with that, there's also definitely still some hope in order to finish first, but I would need to hope that the impact of tech would have been seeded by one of my opponents. moemoe seeds, and the next impact is revealed, the impact of industry, which is a solid one for me. moemoe plays the reserves, finishes the Hollywood for 18 points, and then has to disband a unit of Rifleman to not have an uprising, goes for 1 more tech, or actually doesn't, which is interesting. He instead just takes a whole bunch of stuff away. I have the Harvard College, but I mean, he doesn't really need to take the sufficient upgrade, because I can use 1 anyway, and Eske can't use the 1 that is left anyway because he has no Harvard College. However, moemoe not developing a technology could of course be an indicator that he has actually the impact of technology in hand. So that could definitely be an indicator. Otherwise, I think he should just develop it. Even with having it in hand, I think he should develop it to not give any hints away, and because I think taking the efficient upgrade doesn't really do anything. Now it is my turn, and I see the impact of variety. It's the best impact that I have. Going for an aggression doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's likely that my opponents can defend, and I can't really do anything with the plunder. The impact of science is revealed. That I was very happy to see. It gives me quite some culture against my opponents. Only +5 against Eske, but it's of course still a nice amount for an impact that I did not put into the deck. But Eske at this point was the player that I was eyeing towards the most, as I thought between us it might end up being the closest. Against ciufile, I didn't have that much hope that I will finish before him. With the impact of science, maybe I get a bit closer again, and before moemoe, he is at the moment at the lead, but after my turn we will be relatively close, and then I just thought that I have good chances to score better in the impacts than him. During my turn, I will just go for 3 technologies. I definitely wanted to build 1 movie, especially with the impact of variety being in there also. Then I thought about if I maybe should try to upgrade this arena and then destroy even a computer. I could also consider destroying a Rifleman, but I felt like maybe I want to leave myself prepared for the impact of strength, as it might potentially be seeded by my opponents. Maybe ciufile can also put it into the deck at his last turn, so it could just be one potentially nice impact, at least against Eske, if he doesn't build another army. and if I will actually get a bit stronger still this turn, so it's not that easy for him to overtake me in strength. It's possible, but he at least has to put some effort into it if he wants to put an impact of strength in himself. So I thought about the spending unit, didn't really want to do it, but what I did think about was to destroy a computer actually, now that the impact of science is out, and then build an additional farm, upgrade one, upgrade this arena to pro sports, upgrade, I think maybe if I had the resources, cannons to rockets. Then I would have a very nice impact of balance, plus 16, and a very nice impact of agriculture. But at the end I came to the conclusion it should just be better to destroy this mine, and instead build a theater, go for one upgrade to mechanized agriculture, and for one upgrade from team sports to professional sports, and for one upgrade from cannons to rockets, because that gives me 4 more culture for certain with the movies. I am minus 6 for the impact of balance, minus 3 or 5, depending on whether I actually go for the last upgrade or not, for the impact of agriculture. But I just get 4 culture guaranteed, and if I would go for destroying the computer and not building the movie, I would actually have minus 6 again for the impact of architecture, an impact that could also potentially be in the deck. So with that, I felt like it should definitely be better to go for the movie. Sadly, if there's an impact of culture, that would be very bad, because even with building the second movie, I still have the lowest culture production. That was my last turn. I'm now at 171, so the same amount as moemoe has. Now it's Eske's last turn. He won't see it, so doesn't have an impact that he wants to push. Goes for multimedia, which will be nice for him for the impact of variety, maybe also for some other impacts. He destroys a mine, another mine, and actually builds a warrior and a cannon. Interestingly, he doesn't build a knight, but it wouldn't be enough to overtake me in strength, and so he rather just builds a little bit up for impact of competition and variety. I could destroy this mine without any problem, because impact of industry is out, and impact of harmony I have in my hand. And the weakest thing for impact of balance is for me food production at the moment now, with not going for a second farm. Ciufile puts something into the deck. It's the impact of population, which sadly isn't impact. It gives plus 4 against Eske. He gets plus 18 out of it. Ciufile gets plus 12. He increases his population, uses Churchill interestingly in order to go for the air forces, which maybe could be an indicator that he just put the impact of strength in, or he maybe expects that it could be in the deck. Plays the endowment, finishes the fast food chains for 22 points, and then before the final impacts we have a situation where moemoe and I have the exact same amount of culture. I am definitely quite a bit behind Eske, actually 26 points, but I have 2 impacts where I catch up to him. There could be something like impact of strength, so I definitely have some hope to overtake him, and then ciufile might just be too far away. As said, the only way to overtake him would be if someone else seeded impact of tech into the deck. So let's see what the final impacts have to say. The first one is the impact of progress that I've seeded. As you can see, that one is quite strong for me against all of my opponents, even plus 20 against ciufile, so now I'm only 12 culture behind Eske. Then we have the impact of strength, which I was happy to see. Another impact that gives me plus 5 against Eske. I'm only 7 points behind. moemoe is at this point quite a bit behind. Maybe we'll have difficulties to catch up. There is the impact of competition, which is plus 20 for Eske, but plus 22 for me. So I again catch up a little bit. I'm now only 5 points behind Eske. Then we have the impact of wonders. That one is sadly bad for me. I don't have a lot of those wonders. Minus 5 against me, against Eske, meaning I'm now 10 points behind him. And then we have the impact of variety that was seeded by me. I gained some points again towards Eske. I'm now 4 points behind him. I gained 4 points towards him. I'm 6 points behind him. There's now 1 unknown impact. So let's see if it will be enough for me to overtake Eske, or if I will stay at the 3rd position. The last impact is the impact of culture, and that one sadly is a really bad one for me, meaning that at the end I am behind Eske and even 21 points. At the end, moemoe is even closer to me than I'm towards Eske. So sadly this game ends with me finishing at the 3rd position. ciufile is able to win it. Congratulations to him. At the beginning of the video we saw that he is the player with the lowest position in the Clico ranking, but he made it to stage 5, showed some strong performances, and has a very strong start into this group stage. Eske remains the 2nd position, I finished 3rd, and moemoe finishes at the last position. I was not too happy about the outcome of this game. I felt like I have had a very solid position, a strong economy. Some players were running away with the culture a bit, but I then even got a strong tactic, some wars. I was really thinking at some point, especially after I drew those 2 wars, that things are actually looking quite nicely for me. But the wars just that I declared were not too big at the end. I didn't have a chance to get air forces early, which of course would be a bit lucky, but uh, no, but I didn't have that, so the wars weren't too big. The military lines did cost me some points, not enough that it would have changed something at the end result. It was of course a bit unfortunate how it went with Eske at the beginning of Age 3, that sadly the second copy of Bro Sports was revealed during those 3 cards. I think that helped his position a bit. The war over territory still disrupted him, but sadly he has kept his position stable, and with that at the end still finished before me. And ciufile just going for a nice Michelangelo style game, waiting quite a bit until he started upgrading his economy, but had a big culture lead, had a very solid production, had a Himeji castle to protect himself, and then still with those cool upgrades had some nice resource production, and at the end is the winner of this game. Yeah, so not an ideal start. Actually, one of the 3-player games where I wasn't involved has also already finished, so we can now take a quick look at how that game went and how the standings are looking at the moment. And in the 3-player game, Eske managed to win before moemoe and ciufile, meaning that Eske was only the second place in the 4-player game that we just saw, but with the win in the 3-player game, he still takes the first position at the moment, maybe showcasing that indeed he could be the strongest opponent in the group at the end. ciufile had a very strong start with the 4-player game, but sadly lost the 3-player game, still has a very solid position with 6 points after 2 games finished. moemoe didn't have the ideal start, but had at least 2 points, and I of course also didn't have an ideal start with finishing third at the first 4-player game. I have 1 point, but a lot of games will still be played, so everything is still open. But of course it would be good if maybe at the second 4-player game, which we will take a look at the next video, that I hopefully will finish at a better position, so that I don't go into the 3 and 2-player games with too much of a burden, because as said at the beginning of the video, if I don't win this group, I'm out of the tournament. Alright, so I hope it was an interesting game for you to see. I hope you're excited for the games to come. I will now go for some more uploads again during the following weeks. And I hope you're looking forward to those. And yeah, then thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.